must survive, so we spend our time to the fullest.
Hi, welcome to Professional Insights. Today I have the absolute privilege of interviewing someone who I have a lot of admiration for, and that is Teepa Snow. Teepa Snow, an occupational therapist with 40 years of clinical practice experience, is one of the world's leading educators on dementia and the support that accompanies it. In 2005, she founded Positive Approach to Dementia Care, which is called PAC, P-A-C, a company that provides dementia support training, services, and products around the world. She is an incredible dementia trainer, as well as a passionate advocate for proper support of people living with dementia. I'm Laurie Scher, and it's a privilege to introduce Teepa Snow.
Hey, everybody.
Teepa,
and Laurie,
welcome.
thanks. Thank you for having me. It's good to be with you.
Well, thank you for donating your time once again. Teepa, one of the things that we hear from people living with dementia constantly is, how do I know the type of dementia? What type? How many dementias are there, and what's the difference? What are the symptoms?
Does
Help
it matter? Yeah.
And does
Yeah. And so the answer is, to me, it matters. And to people who are going to try to provide support, it matters. And for people who are living with symptoms, I think it matters, because what I am able to do is really important, whether I'm the person living with dementia or whether I'm the person trying to help. I want to know what's sort of normal for your variation of dementia. So I'll notice when I don't know that that's the dementia. Laurie, I think something else is going on here, because that doesn't make sense for the kind of dementia that you're supposed to have. So I'm wondering if something else might be happening here. And a for sure example would be, let's say someone is living primarily with Lewy body dementia or Alzheimer's, but you start really struggling to find words. And you've got more pauses in your speech. That might just be an episode of active Lewy body, or it could be that maybe you're having a little stroke, and I need to be concerned that we get you more carefully evaluated and not just say, well, that's just her dementia. Well, if she wasn't doing that last week, that makes me a little anxious to just sit around. Could she have an infection? Could she have an inflammation? Could Laurie have something else going on here? Might she have mistaken her medication, or could somebody have put her on a new medication that wasn't a good medication for her? Has she not slept in 5 days? With Lewy body, not that uncommon. So as a support person or a person living with, if I don't know what my common symptoms are, then when I experience something that's not the usual symptoms from that type of dementia, it gets me to a place where it's like, maybe I need to have this looked at a little more carefully. Because the reality is, many people don't get a careful evaluation. Physicians are not that excited sometimes, or that curious. So the latest information I have is about 20% of everybody who gets dementia gets a really good workup, and a thorough workup, and a follow-up.
that's 80 percentage?
No, but that means 80% of people aren't getting something that they should be getting, and we would not accept for any other health condition. So that's a bit of a challenge. So I think it's important to know sort of some of the common symptoms for the different dementias, so that you can pick up on things that, I don't know that that's what's going on here. Or the reality is, you can have more than one kind of dementia on board. You start with one and then a second one kicks in, because they seem to like each other, which isn't something you want to hear, but they do like each other, and it's called mixed picture. So
Okay.
I have a few slides that I thought might be helpful for people to take a look at. We know that there's some differences between normal and not normal aging. And we also know that some people like you and like many of my friends who are living with dementia, you have very much an awareness that something's not right, well before other people figure it out. But there's another group of people who might not notice that about themselves, and they find themselves mostly being frustrated with people around them and new machinery or equipment or a task because their brain is tricking them a bit with the inability to notice the change in themselves. So they notice the change, but they don't realize it's their brain that's changing. They're thinking that other people are being unrealistic, unreasonable. They're asking for something that is different. And it's like, well, no, that's what this is the trip we've always gone on. And because my brain might be changing, I would go, no, it isn't. This isn't the same trip at all. And so we end up more with emotional distress with one another because the person who's trying to help isn't recognizing what's called this problem with self-awareness. And many people are really good at it and some people are not. And that's a challenge because that can happen with any of the dementias. So right off the top, if we're in more of an adversarial kind of setup, trying to figure out what's going on here, it can mask some of the person's abilities, but it can also make it feel like we're arguing with each other about stuff rather than being curious about what's happening. So early on, one of the big challenges I see is that people really struggle with the idea of structural changes and chemical changes. And all too often, somebody wants to take a snapshot of your performance in a moment, when it would be much more valuable to maybe take a few snapshots, but then do a video of you. Spend time with you, explore with you what you're good at and where you're struggling, and where are things that changed and where are some things that have changed. Because if I just take this little snapshot, I can get a real misunderstanding of your day-to-day abilities because all I'm seeing you is in this one little window. And that's all too often what happens in a doctor's office.
So you're suggesting take a video of the person living with dementia throughout the year, throughout different times, so there's a comparison?
Yeah, so I think it's really important, like take a video on Monday morning, take a video on Tuesday afternoon, do a little video on Thursday at lunchtime, and particularly maybe Friday night, because if I have somebody, and with their agreement, but we're trying to gather information so that we can do a good evaluation.
That makes sense. I never thought of taking a video, but that's probably a great way to show the changes that I go through.
Right. And so then when you're talking to the medical provider, and I want to show you how variable it is, because if they just get that one little snapshot, and I'll sort of show you some of the little snapshot, which is they just verbal fluency once. Like, tell me as many animals as you can, Lori. Go. And you have to keep naming animals. And I only do that once. I don't know whether you got any sleep last night, whether you're nervous about doing this, but if I do it several different times and compare, that helps both of us take a look at. So it seems like you're having more challenges at night than during the day. Or it seems like when you are not sleeping well or eating well, boy, does your verbal fluency drop. Or there's no consistent pattern at all, Lori. So I'm wondering about the possibility of more of a vascular dementia than a more standard frontal temporal dementia, because it's so inconsistent. You go from like naming 40 animals to not being able to come up with but 5. And then you can use, because you use sign language, you can sign a whole bunch one time, and the next time you can't sign any. And it's like, wow, that's a really variable performance. So that gives me a lot more data to try to figure things out with you, to be honest. Does that make sense?
That does, and that's a great idea. My husband and I have not done any videotaping, but I think that concept is great for not only to see my baseline and where the changes are, but also in explaining to other people. Because today I'm having a great day, and people look at me and say, well, you look normal, or, you know, what kind of symptoms do you have? How has your life changed? If I then can look at the videos, then I can more accurately express to them what's happening. Because when I'm in a meltdown, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't remember what I did for the most part.
Yeah.
So having a video of me in not such a good place that I can then look at later would help me to explain it to others. I love the idea.
Yeah, because I think we have to start helping each other develop tools that help us accurately describe what's working and not working, when it's not working, because this idea of quote unquote challenging behaviors in dementia, these are challenging situations sometimes, but let's look at the difference how Lori handles being with me and how Lori handles being with, you know, this other person. And it's like, well, Lori's actually, the other person might be the challenge, not Lori. So Lori's sort of stuck with somebody who doesn't know how to be supportive. And sure enough, it makes her look very different. I'm not sure Lori's so different as much as the other person's really pushing button. So it allows us to actually view situations and take a step back, look at environments and tasks and people rather than just that person.
Well, talk to me about the different types of dementia. I mean, you've mentioned that they're different, but what are they? How do I know?
Yeah. How do you know? So this
great only by what the doctor said.
Yeah, it's not just what the doctor says. We're looking at what are the symptoms in living that can give us signals that this part of your brain may not be working as well. This part's working quite well. This part and this part aren't talking to each other very much. So what I use, and it's been around for a bit, an umbrella idea that neurocognitive degeneration, what people call dementia, is a great big umbrella term. And there are consistencies under it. We know at least two parts of a brain are changing in order to fit under the umbrella, and that these changes are changes we have not yet discovered a way to fix or stop. So it's progressive, and it is not curable as of right now. And, you know, we could talk about all that stuff, but under the umbrella, I put raindrops, because normally raindrops are on the top and you're hiding under the umbrella. Here's the deal. With dementia, that's the umbrella term. And look what it's raining crap under the umbrella. And so under this umbrella condition, we have all these different raindrops. And some of them are clumped into large raindrops because it turns out that's sort of a grouping. And we believe that there's some characteristics, causes or characteristics of these different. So Alzheimer's disease is a big raindrop. It's a lot smaller than it used to be, and it is not the be all and end all. It's a big raindrop, but what it means is those folks have beta amyloid plaque formations and tau pathologies. That's what we know. Now, what do we know symptom-wise? Well, I put it on the second page on the back. Classically, people with Alzheimer's are remembering new detail. Old stuff at first is fine, and big picture ideas stick, but the details get mucky. And so, what time is my appointment? Let me look. Oh, yeah. Well, who wrote that on the calendar? Oh, I did. Gosh, what's it about? And I have to keep cueing myself because my hippocampal area has a really hard time holding on to the detail that it used to do without too much trouble. and it's new stuff. But also, I can have some difficulty with trying to find the specific thing that I'm looking for, the object or the word. So when I go detail hunting, I have trouble with details. So I know what I'm looking for, but trying to find it with my eyes and get it with my hand in that moment, when I'm looking at a whole environment, I can just sort of get overwhelmed. It's like it shouldn't be this hard. And yet I'm having trouble holding on to this stuff. So when I'm looking, it's like suddenly like, crap, what am I looking for? I came in, I was looking for something. What was it?
Right.
And then if I try to tell somebody what it was, you know what I'm talking about. It's what you use to start the car. It's a new kind. And so I keep struggling to try to come up with a way to get my message, but it all started with I couldn't find the thing I was looking. It's that kind of situation. So on average, people with Alzheimer's will show those kind of changes first. And I might also either get a little more impulsive in decision making or become more indecisive. Like I want to pause, whoa. I'm not deciding yet. I can't make up a decision because when I go to compare things, I'm struggling with comparisons, which is, well, I don't know. Wait a minute, let me think. And so my let me think thing, I get sort of turned around and thinking, and then I can't make a decision, or I get real impulsive and make decisions and people are going, whoa, wait a minute, Lori, but I thought you were going to do this. I've changed my mind. It's like, okay. So it's comparing you to you. Okay. Now a second big grouping is Lewy body disease. And I put it second because it's the most missed of all the diagnoses and it's the most misunderstood of all the dementias in my book. People think psychiatric, and it is related to Parkinson's. It involves synuclein protein malformations, which is a different kind of protein than Alzheimer's. But where it forms up and where it starts killing brain cells or damaging brain cells makes a big difference. If it's deep in the brain and diffuse all over the brain, then we get more of the psychiatric, quote unquote, symptoms, maybe visual disturbances where I see things that are inaccurate or not actually there. They often involve animals, children, or people showing up. They can frequently be silent. So they're just visual things that go on with my brain. Or it could be that I think things that are not true or true. So it's called delusional thinking, where I think my spouse is cheating on me. I think people are trying to harm me or hurt me or steal things from me. And my brain makes up stuff. It's called confabulation. And it comes and it goes. But when it's happening, it's very real and very frightening and very distressing. I can sometimes misidentify people. So I think that's not really my spouse. It's another person. And I want my spouse back, sometimes related to emotional distress that we're having. Then I have trouble with fine motor skills sometimes where I can't get my hand to do what I want it to. And the more I try, the more I get a tremor. Or I could have an episode where my blood pressure shoots up or drops down or blood sugar shoot all over the place. Or I can actually, I can pass out. So I could have lots of falls. And then they disappear completely. I could have nighttime problems where I can't sleep, or I have nightmares I think are real, but it's episodic. And so Lewy body is probably the most mishandled, misdiagnosed, undiagnosed condition in the dementia categories. Vascular, which is the third grouping, that one's a little different. That one is important in that it's a blood supply and nourishment of the brain tissue. So it's the least predictable. And it's the one that can come on pretty suddenly. And it's the one that can seem to get better and then get worse. And it's the one that you could be 3 different people with vascular and you would look like 3 very different people. And yet you all have vascular disease. But it turns out that vascular disease and other dementias like to hang together. because inflammation or problems with blood circulation and nourishment of the brain cells, it's a high risk condition kind of thing. And then the fourth grouping are the frontal temporal dementias. And that's a grouping of either having temporal lobe changes, language related changes, or front lobe changes, which is executive control, behavioral, making choices, thinking things through, being able to be self-aware, being able to see other people's points of view, to get started doing something, sequence to it, know when you're done with it and move on to something else versus getting stuck. So people can have one, people could have several. You can start with one and develop a second. And then over to the other side, we have all these other dementias. And current estimates, somewhere around 100 to 120 forms, causes, and types.
As we talk about the different types of dementias and that you can have more than one, let's say I'm diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and based on different symptoms I have, I just don't feel as though this is a good diagnosis. What do I say to the doctor? How do I encourage him to look further?
Yeah, so this is where I go back to, boy, if I had a video or two, I could say, see, I want to show you something. Rather than just tell you about it, I want to show you something. This is me. And I'm really curious because when I looked at what the common symptoms are for what we've said we thought I had, this doesn't feel like those common symptoms. What do you think?
Okay. That's another good point with the video. And I know from my experience that it is important to have a proper diagnosis. The doctor had diagnosed me with FTD, but yet put me on donepezil. And the first 3 months I went downhill so quickly, my husband thought for sure I'd need a full-time caregiver within a year.
Yeah.
And with Lewy body, lots of medications have an impact. So from your perspective, why is it important that I even not argue with the doctor, but question the doctor's diagnosis? Why is that important?
Yeah. It's critical that if I'm going to live with something, then I need to get familiar and comfortable with what it is I'm living with. I want to figure out, is this my coat or is this somebody else's? Just because you put it in my closet doesn't mean it belongs to me. So sometimes physicians or health providers, including PTs, OTs, speech people, who aren't thoughtful and careful can really make some assumptions rather than careful assessments. And if I'm going to live with something that's changing me, then I want to be able to call a pause, a timeout, and say, hey, hang on. See, you're saying this, and that's not my experience. So I want to find out, is it just from my point of view that it's not my experience and I'm missing something? Or is this truly you're missing something because you're only seeing me in this one frame and you've got me in the wrong box? And so you're giving me things that are not helpful to me because I don't actually belong in that box, but you didn't necessarily spend the time or the energy or the effort figuring that out. You thought it made sense for me to fit here because you saw I was this age and I had done this, and my sister said this about me, and yet you didn't really investigate in a variety of situations what happens, because it's easy to make bad judgments, and that's just the reality of trying to do something when I only have some data, and I'm not living inside your brain, so I can only use what shows. And that's important.
It is. Teepa, thank you so much for your time and for all you do to help those of us living with dementia, by helping us and also by helping our support partners and training them. We're out of time, but I just wanted to thank you. And also, for those of you that are viewing this, if you like it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and definitely visit our website, which is daanow.org. And also visit Teepa's website, which has some really awesome ideas and training material on it. And that'll be showing at the end of the screen. We'll be posting that. So, but thank you all and have a great day.
Thanks, Lori, and thanks to everyone for tuning in. Hopefully we did something here that might help you, because that's why we do what we do.
We're living beyond dementia, connecting our lives to help us survive. So we spend our time to the fullest we can. We're seeing our lives